Conflict is inevitable in our world. There are billions of people on this planet, all of whom are different. Thank goodness that there's not thousands of me running around. But because we're different, we see things differently, we hear things differently, we say things differently, and inevitably that's going to lead to some butting heads. And how we deal with conflict really affects the levels of peace and joy and happiness that we feel in our life. So it's worth taking a second to reflect on how can we deal with conflict in a way that uses all of our body's intelligence. So when we get into conflict with somebody, there is some sort of stimulus or event that happens. So somebody says something that you don't like or does something that you don't like. Then there's this middle section, which is the squiggly line that's up on the whiteboard. You're all over the place. There's these internal processes happening, and a lot of times we're unaware of them, or we can be unaware of them. And then finally, there's an outcome or response that pops out from that internal process. And the more we can be aware and use our body's intelligence in that middle process, the better the outcomes are going to be. Oftentimes what's happening in the middle there is really just a conditioned response. You are responding to a past conflict or event, and you're using that response. You're kind of like in a rut, and it just comes back out of you again. And this is what leads to a lot of times coming back to the same conflict over and over. Some people have gotten to a point where it isn't just a conditioned response, and they are thinking through the words that they're saying. But for most people, it ends there. If it's not a conditioned response, it's just a thought response. And that is leaving out so much of our capacity, right? We have EQ, which is widely accepted everywhere now. It's our emotional intelligence. Then we also have what I call our SQ, which is our spiritual intelligence. And we need to use IQ, EQ, and SQ to resolve a conflict in the best way possible. Before we get started here, I just want to say one thing, which is that it only takes one side of an argument to resolve that conflict. Doesn't matter what the other person is thinking, doing, or saying. All that matters is what you are thinking, doing, or saying. It's so easy to cast that blame out. But my ask of you as you think through these things is, how can I, on my side, resolve this conflict? Because I deserve peace, happiness, joy, and all those things that come with conflict resolution. So let's first think about IQ, which, like I said, that is mentally coming to our solution. The problem with that is oftentimes our mind plays tricks on us. We can't comprehend a whole situation with our brain. We think we want something, but in reality, we actually want this other thing. So an example of that is, maybe I forgo my desires because I want to resolve this conflict. So I want to go to Chick-fil-A and my daughter wants to go to McDonald's, and I say, okay, we're just going to go to McDonald's, screw it, it's not worth the fight. That's intellectually, I'm getting out of that conflict. However, what that leaves on an emotional level is resentment, right? Or anger. And so we have these secondary emotions that we need to circle back to that oftentimes lead to more conflict down the line. When we try and just think through a problem, a lot of times we don't comprehend the energy that is underlying the situation. So we're just seeing the surface level stuff. We're not seeing what's below the words. And oftentimes what's below the words is what the person is actually trying to get across. Language is a limitation, right? It's really, really hard to get the things that we have inside of us to express those to another human. And so if you're just hearing words, you're missing out on so much of that other person's message. And so if I can't really hear what the other person is saying and connect with them and be compassionate and have empathy, I'm not going to be able to see things from their side. And that's why the next step of conflict resolution is utilizing your EQ, your emotional intelligence. Now, our emotions work a lot different than our mind. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of patience to understand your emotional guidance system. So if this is something that feels foreign to you, know that it felt so foreign to me, and it took me a very long time to understand what my body was trying to tell me. Our emotions, the reason I say my body is that our emotions show up in our bodies. They show up as patterns of energy, right? Emotion, energy in motion. And we can feel that as physical sensations. So like a tingling in your hands or a tightness in your chest or a flushed face. Those are all signs of some emotion. Now, I wish I could just give you a guide and say, when your face gets flushed, it's this. And when your hands feel tingly, it's this. But it's different for everyone. So the biggest piece of advice I have for you is to keep a journal. If you want to call it an emotion journal, cool. But basically, anytime you get triggered, when you remember, go to that journal and just write down the emotion that you were feeling and what you were feeling in your body. And bringing awareness to that over and over again is going to sort of start to develop a library for you. So for example, I know that I feel fear as like a tightness in my belly, like a slight nausea, like tightness, and a constriction in my chest. Both of those things, if I feel them at the same time, I know I'm scared of something. After you have that bank, it becomes so much easier in the moment because you can just think or feel, okay, I feel this emotion. And you can really reflect on that. And you can decide which of the emotions that you're feeling are from this current situation versus which are from that conditioned response that we were talking about earlier. That response that ultimately is probably in our shadow, probably something that's not going to serve you moving forward. The other really big benefit of EQ is that it allows you to connect on a deeper level with the other person. So getting to that energy behind the words. And you can feel what they're feeling. One caveat there, be careful. You can't put words in somebody's mouth. You can't actually feel what they're feeling. Okay, finally we get to our SQ. And our SQ is really the crown jewel of all of this thing. And it's an idea that's been in the world for a very long time, centuries, thousands of years. And yet it has been ignored recently. And as a reminder, SQ is your spiritual intelligence or your soul intelligence. And I believe that eventually it's going to be seen as equal to IQ and EQ. If you rewind 50 years, EQ, nobody was talking about EQ or knew what it was or thought it was important. Now we can't imagine thinking about interacting with other people without mentioning our emotional intelligence. And I think our SQ is the next big piece of this puzzle that's going to come online. You need all of these intelligences to work through conflict. But honestly, you need all of these intelligences to live your best life, to live a life of purpose, to connect with other humans, to show and receive love. We need all of these intelligences online all the time. So the way that I define our SQ is your ability to reason beyond logic. And you tap into it by slowing down, by unwinding your ego, by listening carefully to your body, by opening your heart, and by trusting in life. And that's a hard one for me anyway. And it's not an easy process. All of those things are so hard to do, especially in our society, the rush, the hustle, the bustle. But I promise you, it is worth it to sit down and start to tap into your SQ. So with SQ, we enter into the domain of the big picture. It helps us to remember what's actually important in our life. We remember how small we are, how little this situation is probably going to matter in 5 years or 10 years from now. We think of even somebody like Marcus Aurelius, who had a massive impact on the world, and still so many people don't know who he is today. So really, is it that important? So yes, we're small, and when you tap into that SQ, you recognize how much impact you can truly have in the world if you learn how to deal with these more difficult frequencies with love and grace. So the name of the game with SQ is having an open heart. It means choosing the path of love over the path of fear. Ultimately, you're in conflict with someone because you think that they can take something from you. So that might be a physical thing, or it might also just be your peace or your happiness or your joy. But no one can take those things from you. Someone might be able to take a physical thing from you, but they can't take your peace. They can't take your joy. Only you can give those things away. And living with an open heart means softening and trusting and knowing that you're safe even in the midst of that conflict. It means remembering and knowing that there is no separate person in the first place. And that's probably a deeper topic for another video. So SQ is the deepest intelligence, and because of that, it takes the longest time to get online. So a couple of tools that you can work with to develop your SQ. Meditation is a great one. Ziva meditation is what I love and practice. I encourage you to check them out. Contemplation. So I do a lot of talking about the gene keys, and Richard Rudd often talks about contemplation, which is keeping an idea in your mind, but a soft focus on that idea and just sort of letting your mind go and then coming back to that idea or anchor. Movement, yoga, dance, running, anything that it's the same sort of repetitive motion over and over again will allow you to start to tap into that intelligence, as long as your brain can sort of turn off in that process. Like driving 300 miles an hour on a racetrack, probably not the best thing. Studying sacred texts, whatever that means to you, can help bring your SQ online. So that could be the Bible or the Quran or the gene keys. Slowing down, that's probably the biggest one. It's in all caps on my screen over here. You've got to slow down to hear that intelligence. Get time in nature at mountains or the beach. Laugh. Laughter is one of the things that really connects us to our core, to who we are. Journal. Like I said, as things come up, write them down. Start to make connections. When your SQ is online, not only are we better able to resolve the conflict, but then we're able to use that conflict as creative fuel. So this is the essence of transmutation. I'm sure you've heard this before. It is the meaning of alchemy. It is what artists are known for. This hard thing happened in my life, and instead of letting it ruin my life or dictate my life, I'm going to take those frequencies into me and I'm going to use them to create something. We turn our lead, which is anger, sadness, fear, into gold, peace, service, love. That is true alchemy. And that's actually why I'm making this for you right now. I was in a conflict with somebody that I care about a lot. And as I reflected on what happened, I understood through my EQ and my SQ and my IQ that what I needed to do was change my intention going into this situation. And if I could do that, then everyone would feel better, not just me, but the other person involved as well. And if I just thought about the situation, the response I would have come up with would have solved the problem this time, but not again and again and again. And so I would have been stuck in that shadow cycle that we see oftentimes. So literally, you're watching this conflict resolution process in action right now, because this video comes from it. All right, that is some ideas on conflict resolution using your whole body, IQ, EQ, SQ. I hope you guys found it helpful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and we'll talk soon.